Hello, everyone. My name is Sovanaro Ong, and welcome to my podcast. Today, I'll be talking about landlord tenant disputes and lease enforcement, focusing on how this works in California. Here is the table of contents that will be in my podcast today. There are 8 points that are mandatory to discuss about, which include what is lease, what is a breach of lease, real life scenario, especially legal problem that can happen, legal, no, sorry, lease enforcement process, tenant rights, leading to business impact, and last but not least, how to avoid these disputes. Basically, renting property is a normal part of life, especially in places like California where housing is expensive and many people rely on leases instead of owning homes. Because of this, conflicts between landlords and tenants are quite common, and sometimes these conflicts turn into legal disputes. In this podcast, I will be focusing on landlord tenant disputes and how lease agreements are enforced under the law. Instead of just explaining definitions, I will connect the legal rules to a realistic situation in California, where tenant protection laws are stricter compared to many other places. This topic is important because both landlords and tenants face financial risk if they don't understand their legal rights and responsibilities. Through this discussion, I will show how the law actually works in real life and why it matters in business decisions. Alright, to start, a lease is a legally binding contract between a landlord and a tenant. The landlord agrees to provide a place to live, and the tenant agrees to pay the rent and follow the rules stated in the lease. Once the lease is signed, both sides are legally required to follow it. In California, landlord tenant law is quite detailed and often protects tenants more strongly. This means landlords cannot just remove tenants or take action without following proper legal steps. Now, let us understand what is a breach of lease. A breach happens when either party does not follow the lease. For example, tenants not paying the rent or landlords not maintaining the property properly. Let's look at a real life type of situation. Imagine a tenant in Los Angeles signs a 1 year lease for an apartment. Everything looks fine at first, but after a few months, the tenant starts having financial problems and misses two rent payments. The landlord becomes frustrated and decides to change the lock and remove the tenant belongings without going to court. At first, it may seem like the tenant is clearly in the wrong for not paying the rent, and legally, this is true. Failing to pay rent is a breach of the lease agreement. However, the landlord is also violating the law. In California, landlords are not allowed to perform what is called a self help eviction, like locking a tenant out or removing their property without a legal eviction process. Instead, the landlord must give a proper notice, such as a pay or quit notice, and then go through the court system. If the tenant does not comply, this situation this situation shows something important. Even if one party breaks the contract, the other party still has to follow the law. Now, let's talk about lease enforcement. Lease enforcement means using legal methods to make sure the agreement is followed. For landlords, this usually include uh filing for eviction, also known as an unlawful detainer case, or suing for unpaid rent. And for tenants, they also have rights. For example, if the landlord fails to maintain safe living condition like no heating, no cooling, broken plumbing, or unsafe structures, the tenant may have the right to withhold rent, request repairs, or terminate the lease in some cases. From a business perspective, this is very important. Landlords are running a business, and renter income is part of their cash flow. If tenants doesn't pay rent, it creates financial pressure. But if landlords break the law, they may face lawsuit penalties or even have to pay damage to the tenant. For tenants, not understanding the lease can also lead to a serious consequences. They might lose their deposit, face eviction records, or be sued for damage, which can affect their ability to rent in the future. Sorry. What I find interesting here is that many of these disputes could actually be avoided. Clear lease agreements, good communication, and understanding legal responsibilities can prevent most conflicts before they become serious. For example, having clear terms about rent deadlines, late fees, maintain responsibilities, and notice periods can reduce confusion and protect both parties. In conclusion, landlord tenants disputes are more than just personal disagreements. They are legal issues that involved contracts, rights, and responsibilities. In places like California, where tenant protection law are strong, it is especially important for both landlords and tenants to follow proper legal procedures. Understanding how lease enforcement works can help reduce risk, avoid avoid conflict, and support better business decisions. That would be all today for the podcast. Thank you very much for listening.